What's going on, everybody? I'm Jeff Kirkchin, and welcome to another episode of Do What You Love. We appreciate you, following and subscribing and rating the podcast. We are into double-digit episodes now, so for your support, it's awesome. And our guest is a new-found friend of mine, and she has taken what was a very successful, very awesome TV career, and now is working for herself and doing what she loves for every definition of that saying, and that's why I had to have her on the podcast. All things considered, she had me on her accounts and on Nacho Scout. We'll get into all of that, but I felt like she would be a perfect match. Suzie Hunter is on with us. Hi, how are you?
Jeff, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to chat with you again because we hung out during All-Star Week.
I know, and I'm sorry that I'm not offering you food right now during our interview, because that's how your interview with me went, with a beer and nachos. And unfortunately, virtually, I can't. Maybe I could Venmo you a couple bucks to go grab a cookie or something, but I have to say, you have an incredible story, and you are a passionate sports, specifically baseball fan, and you're a passionate content creator. And I think on a podcast like this, where I'm doing this on my own, I'm literally in a bedroom that's now this podcast studio. I love bringing in people who make it their own, because I'm trying every day to grow this into something. So let's talk about Suzie Hunter. You started in news. You went to school for broadcast journalism, and that's kind of your background. What was your first job in broadcast news?
So actually, after I graduated college, I couldn't even get a job on air. I applied to hundreds of stations, and I ended up at a newspaper. I was at the Hartford Courant. I was in the features department for 4 years, which was kind of a dream job. I mean, I wrote about local entertainment. I wrote about food. I did all the food videos and food photography for that feature section. So that was just so cool in itself. But unfortunately, newspapers do not pay you money. So I had always still wanted to do TV. And then after that, I made the very unusual transition from newspaper to TV. But then my first broadcast job was at the ABC affiliate in Connecticut, WTNH.
That is so cool to go from newspaper to television, and now with what you're doing with your own branding, over 24,000 followers on your personal Instagram account, and you're also growing the Nacho Scout, which I have to get into, and that's how kind of we became connected. So for you, when did you take your career, put it on the side, and say, I'm here to build the personal brand? How did that decision come about, and when did that decision come about?
Yeah, so I decided I'd been thinking about it during the pandemic, and I'd always thought about doing an every ballpark road trip. I mean, every baseball fan has dreamed of doing something like that. And during the pandemic, I thought, okay, if when baseball comes back, I want to do this. So my contract was up in March, and I was like, you know what? This is the time to go for it. So I decided to take a little time off from the biz and hit the road. So that's what I've been doing ever since. And it was kind of like a now or never situation. I'm like, what better time would there be to do something like that?
And Suzie, I think that's so inspirational, because there's so many people who are in their 60s or 70s who always wish they had done that one thing. They'd always wish that they had just said, you know what, like one of my best friends, closest friends, decided, all right, before I really get into the teaching career that he's now into, he went overseas to play hockey. And that was always a dream of his, to play hockey professionally. And he knew he wasn't going to make it in any level other than overseas professional, but he did it, and he can always look back on those years and value that. And I have so much respect for you for saying, I want to do this ballpark tour, something that I wish. Part of me always says, I'm a pretty religious guy. I'm a good Christian, and I always say, hey, if God put me on the beach, as we say in the industry, as in without a job, I would find an opportunity to do something cool like a stadium tour. And I think this is amazing. How many stadiums have you visited thus far?
So for this season so far, I'm at stadium number 14. Number 14 was Coors Field for the All-Star game. I'll go to a proper Rockies game too by the time the week is over. But yeah, I'm about halfway through, so I'm on a great pace for this season.
That's great. And yeah, today is the day we're filming this is July 15th. So you're 14 in, obviously 30 active ballparks. When you plan this out, are you buying tickets way in advance, or are you driving up and scalping? How are you? But you do have like kind of a plan of, okay, here's where I'm going to go next. Were you like using like Google Maps? How did you plan this out?
I planned out by the schedule, but I'm not buying tickets that far in advance because I never know what's going to happen. So I planned out the dates. It took me 7 hours to map it all out. So I had the maps up. I marked them all on a map. I was like, okay, I'd like to go here, here, here. Okay, here are the dates. This will make it work. So I had to map it out for the whole season just to make sure that the route that I wanted to take was possible. And I changed a million times. It was the hardest part, I think, was just planning it out.
Did you lean into anybody else who's done this in the past? Because I know a couple other people have tried this feat and written books about it. And you and I talked about maybe you publishing a book one day. Or did you just say, I'm just going to do this the best way I know and just plan it out myself?
I read a couple of blogs. I found some blogs from some people who have done the Every Ballpark road trip before. So I took some advice from that. But for the most part, I'm like, I'm going to figure it out on my own because I love figuring it out on my own.
All 30 ballparks. Suzie Hunter is 14 of 30 in. And of the 14 you've been to, which one is your favorite thus far?
So my favorite new one that I visited is PNC Park in Pittsburgh. I somehow, growing up in Philly, I had never made it across to the other side of my state. I'd never made it to Pittsburgh. And I feel like it's kind of vice versa too. Like people from Pittsburgh don't necessarily visit Philadelphia all the time either. So I got to visit that for the first time, and it's just a cool city too. And I appreciate a city with a color scheme. I love to see that.
Oh my gosh, I never really thought about it that way, but that is very factual. A color scheme in every sense of the word. Now, Suzie, I love that you're doing this, and I think it's really awesome, but not only are you doing this incredible thing by exploring all 30 parks, and I want to nerd out with you on baseball a little bit later, but I'm going to save the people our, inside baseball knowledge here in a minute. But you're also doing something called the Nacho Scout. You're a big ballpark foodie, which I love, because if you were going to be like, yeah, I get a salad at every park, I'd be like, why are you even going? Like, you're wasting your time. Ballpark food is what makes the experience. So tell us about Nacho Scout.
Yeah, so back in 2017, my best friend Amanda and we were, getting drinks one night talking about what would a dream job be. And I was like, well, obviously the dream is to have a TV show where you go to all the ballparks and you rate the food and you talk about the, great spots you can visit afterwards. And she's like, why aren't we just doing that? Like, we could just start doing that right now. So then we did. We started doing that summer. We were doing minor league parks, but by the end of the season, we were doing videos with the Phillies. We did videos with the Eagles. And I kind of feel like that helped me also get my TV job in the process because I was showing people that I could do on-air stuff too. So we've been doing that since then. It's kind of difficult this season for a couple of reasons. Still a little tougher to travel, even though people are traveling now. It's still tough to get ballpark access like that. But I mean, we're still doing the best we can, but ballpark food is still just a passion.
What's the best ballpark food item you've ever had specifically from one stadium? I bet you knew I was going to ask you that.
My favorite ballpark food of all time are the monster nachos in section 110 at Coors Field.
Wow. So you're in Denver while we're filming this mid-July, and this has now surpassed whatever it was before that. That's insane.
Well, I've been to Coors Field a lot. So I used to cover the Rockies AA team. So every year since I started doing that, I've made a trip out to Coors Field. And of course, I've had a lot of nachos. I know it's good. And these are excellent. So I'm happy to be back here because I ate them 3 days in a row.
Wow. I think that's so incredible that you are the nacho expert at this point. And the monster nachos, you heard it here, Coors Field, Make sure to grab them. I was just at All-Star Weekend, unfortunately more in a working capacity. I did find some time for entertainment, which I'm excited to say we got to sit down and chat, which I didn't look at that as work at all, because we sat down, we chatted baseball, we chatted food, we chatted a whole bunch about, our careers in broadcasting. And I think that that is something that a lot of people are afraid to do, is take the skill set that you've learned in video editing, in on-air capability, in writing, in blogging, and doing all of that, and taking those skills and putting them to work for themselves. And we mentioned earlier that was a pretty tough decision for you, but now that you're in the thick of it, how do you feel? Like, is the Suzie Hunter, is this going to be the brand? Is she ever going back to broadcast news?
I don't know what's going to happen. It's impossible to plan right now. Right now, I keep saying this to, my friends. I'm like, I don't know how I can go from living a life like this where I am basically living out of my car. I don't sleep in it, but all of my stuff is in there. How am I going to go back to, like, when I'm going to live in an apartment? I mean, I'll go back to regular life, but it just seems so weird right now. But I'm not even going to think about it too much because I still have a long way to go.
Yeah, well, I think you're on the right track, absolutely. And I get the question all the time, and I want to pose it to you. I won't give my answer, but a lot of people ask me, hey, I want to start my own YouTube channel. I want to start my own vlog. I want to start my own podcast, but I don't know where to start. And I always tell them, I say, it's easier now than it's ever been before, and that almost makes it difficult because there's so much competition. Even with my podcast, I think it just surpassed 6 million podcasts on Apple Podcasts, something like that. So the competition is high, but what advice would you give to somebody who's maybe thinking about starting a brand or going out and going on an adventure like your 30 ballpark tour?
Just do it. And when it comes to, starting a YouTube channel or starting anything, just start it. Yeah, your first whatever you're doing is probably not going to be very good, but you just have to do it and learn from it and try it and see what works. You have to lean into how awkward it is when you start doing something new, but just going for it is the biggest step. It's like you have to. If there's something that you want to do, you just gotta give it a try. And you can't really worry too much about, like, how many views am I getting right now? Like, how many followers do I have? Are people into this? Like, if you're passionate about it and you're trying to parlay it into maybe something bigger, maybe like a dream job in the future, just having the experience and trying it on your own, I think also goes a long way.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I just talked to a friend here in Las Vegas who's looking to, he keeps saying, you don't have experience on your resume. That's what people are telling him. And he said, so I'm just going to start my own podcast. And I said, that is absolutely genius, because then you're showing that not only are you have the capabilities, the editing and all of that, but you also truly are a self-starter. I mean, if you're willing to work on your own for yourself, making $0 this podcast right now, but then what are you going to be willing to do when they pay you?
Exactly. That is such a great way to look at it.
And so I always tell people it can't be about the money. If you're relying on the money, it's going to be difficult. And I'm not here to pass judgment or whatever, but if you're anything like me and you're self-starting, there is monetization. There is YouTube money that could come in. It's nothing to live by, but it definitely, you got to start somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly, yeah.
And so you were in newspaper, you were having trouble finding that on-air gig, and you made yourself an on-air personality through your branding, which is so cool.
I'm so happy it worked.
I know, right? And so I noticed you have 24,000 plus Instagram followers. Did that happen overnight? For people who are like, even me, like, I'm a radio personality, I could tell you, I think I have 3,500. I'm gonna take a guess on that. Oop, I'm into somebody's story. Yeah, 3,100. Not even that many. So how are you able to use Instagram? Because so many people are going to be listening to this podcast today who want to start something like you have started and had success starting. So how do you find yourself getting people to push to your accounts?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm consistent in posting. I went through a phase where I would kind of plan out like what type of things I was going to post every week. And I know a lot of people say, oh, there's a trick to the algorithm. You have to do, X number of pictures and like X number of reels and stuff like that. So I don't like follow that specifically, but I kind of use that as a little map to like the kind of things that I should be doing and posting. And honestly, like reels are big right now. Even if your reel isn't very good, Instagram is probably going to push it. So just start making them and be consistent. And also don't be afraid to follow people. I know sometimes people are maybe afraid to start following someone. They want to keep the ratio nice and small, but you need to follow the people who are doing the types of things that you want to be doing, because then they might see you, they'll follow back. You can DM them, ask for advice. I've made so many friends that way. That's the best thing about the internet, is the friends you make on it. But yeah, just doing it and being consistent and being really authentic and showing your personality. Biggest things that you can do to grow any of your social platforms.
One, I think you brought up a really good point there, is the connections you can make with other creators. Some of my favorite creators literally have nothing to do with anything I can be a part of. Like, I've followed on Instagram recently and on TikTok somebody who shears sheep. Try to say that 10 times fast. And I've never grown up on a farm. I've never milked a cow. I've never done anything. But I love their personality. I find it oddly satisfying watching a sheep get sheared. No idea why. But I would recommend the account. Trust me, Suzie. You're like, this guy's crazy.
Send me the link. No, send me the link. Because also, have you seen the girl on TikTok who catches bees?
Yes. I also follow her.
The internet is so weird.
It's an amazing place. And, like, there are everything from catching bees to shearing sheep to Dr. Pimple Popper to all of these opportunities to match with creators. And I think, as a semi-creator myself, it's important to not just promote within your circle, but promote out of your circle. And you mentioned the catching of the bees. Is there anybody else you follow, a creator either on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, you're like, I can't believe I'm into this, but I'm into it now?
You know, there's a girl that I follow on TikTok who will either like, she'll like go through the really bad like Tinder profiles or Bumble profiles, and like she like says all the stuff. It's like, oh, I've thought that scrolling through those. And it's just like the way she does it is so funny. Can't even remember her name right now, but TikTok always shows her to me. One of the first things I see when I'm scrolling through.
Yeah, it's a dangerous app, because I found myself on there for hours, and then I look at the clock and I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I been doing with my life? This entire time I've been on TikTok. But they know what I like, and I think it's so cool that you're now part of that conversation. You're part of that baseball world, because you're using hashtags. People are discovering your journey, and I think that's really neat. For you, you've just in this visit, now I know you've been a lifelong baseball fan, but just in this visit, can you recall one moment from these 14 stadiums, whether, because I believe that baseball fans are the greatest fans on earth. Now, if anybody wants to battle me on that, feel free to be a guest on the podcast. I'll go 45 minutes toe-to-toe with you anytime you want. But I believe that baseball fans are the greatest. Is there a family, somebody who works at the stadium, even a player, or somebody you've met in this 14 stadium, soon to be 30 by the end of the year, that you really loved hearing about their story?
You know, there was this one guy that I first interacted with on Instagram, but he is also visiting all of the ballparks, not all in one season. He was supposed to finish it. I think he was supposed to finish it last year, wanted to finish all 30 ballparks before he turned 30, but he couldn't do it. So now he's like, okay, I'm finishing them this summer. And we had been following each other, and then like ended up crossing paths in Atlanta. So I got to hear just like all about, you know, his journey and making it happen. And I've just met so many people who are trying to check off more ballparks off of their list because they're making up for lost time. And it's just cool to see that we're able to, and that things are starting to come back. And people are like mad emotional about coming back to a ballpark after being away for so long.
Well, there's something magical about a ballpark, and you and I got into this, and as soon as that episode releases too, we'll get it all out on Do What You Love, so you can follow at Do What You Love JK. Also, you can follow at the Suzie Hunter for all of the stuff that she's awesome and creating, so give her a follow too. But I think that when it comes to, and we discussed this, the magic of baseball stadiums. I just don't feel the same way, and I've been to plenty of NFL games. I've been to plenty of NBA games, NHL games. And as much as I love going to a Vegas Golden Knights game at T-Mobile Arena, the energy is unreal. The crowd is so great. There's a different love. It's almost an intimacy that you have with these places and these parks. And we talked on your episode and on your page about my top 5 ballparks. And most of the reason why they're my top 5 is just about the feeling you get when you walk in the door and a memory that you've had at that stadium. For you as a kid, what made you fall in love with all this baseball stuff? We all kind of remember that one game we went to where you got a ball thrown to you during BP or whatever it was. Was it your parents? Was it a moment you had? What made you fall in love with baseball?
My grandfather is the biggest baseball influence in my life. So the game was always on. He was a huge Red Sox fan, but like the game was always on. If he was driving me to something, it was on the radio. So it was just like always, it was just always around me. And I just love how weird it is. Something about a ballpark. And when I was a kid, just getting a hot dog. I was little going to games. We wouldn't pay attention to anything, but I like that that was an option still. And then as I got older, I got more into it. And as I got older, the Phillies got better too. So that made it a little easier as well. But it's such a weird sport. And it's so special and so sentimental, and what's not to love?
Yeah, it's weird in the sense of you see all the time things that have never happened before in a game, and it's the oldest game in our country. So it's crazy to think that, and I think that's why my dad, who's been covering this longer than both of us have been alive combined, my dad loves it because of he'll be covering this game so long and he'll see something he's never seen before if you just kind of open up your eyes and look to it. Now, when I went on my first date at a ballpark, I brought my then high school girlfriend, and I used to keep score at every game, and I wouldn't miss an out. That's how nerdy I was as a kid. And then I brought my scorebook, and as I'm leaving, my parents asked, well, what are you doing with that? And I said, I was going to keep score. And they said, no, you're not. You're not going to keep score on a date, Jeff. Okay, you have to pay attention to her, not your scorebook. And it was the best advice I ever got, because I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, maybe I'll teach her. And she's like, they're like, she doesn't care. Like, she won't know. She doesn't know the game like you do. She didn't grow up like you do. And I think that it changed in me what baseball meant to me. And even though I still will keep score from time to time, for me now it's about the experience. It's about the food. It's about the game day life. For you in the 14 parks, and I know things have been a little bit different, what is one of the funniest bits? And I know you've worked with minor league baseball and you've been to a lot of minor league parks. What's one of the funniest fan experiences that you've seen and provided? Because I worked at a minor league stadium, and Suzie, I used to be the hot sauce packet that would run and try to beat the other packets, you know what I mean? And I would win Taco Bell for my whole section if I won. So that was like, as an intern, that was like the funnest job. For you, what was something cool, a fan experience at a ballpark?
I'm going to bring it back to Pittsburgh. They have a pierogi race, and the intro video to the pierogi race that they play on the big screen is the funniest thing I have ever seen at a ballpark. It is so intense. It's on YouTube, so you'll have to look it up. It's just, they steal a truck, they're driving to the park, it's just absolute chaos, and then they come out onto the field and do the race. So that in itself is just so funny, but you can also get pretty good pierogies at PNC Park.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's all about cross-marketing and cross-branding, right?
Oh, yeah. Branding is everything. We know it.
Branding is everything for Suzie Hunter as well, and we even mentioned, I just have to bring it up if it's okay with you.
Yeah,
your email address is the greatest email address I've ever been given in my life.
It's just hi@thesuziehunter.com. I'm consistent.
Hi thesuziehunter.com. Now, you have a website, thesuziehunter.com, right? I'm assuming here.
Yes, correct.
And when you were given the @ you're like, well, now I can't be suziehunter@gmail.com or whatever. And you come up with hi, which I think in the little time I've known you, is so you.
Gotta keep it consistent. Honestly, it just makes it easier for people to follow you too.
Right, absolutely. And I want to bring up a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, Eva Zamaris, who is a news reporter, and she was one of my first ever radio co-hosts. And my junior year, I was co-hosting a morning show at Syracuse University, and she was a senior. She was running her own show. This just goes to show a testament of broadcast people, and she taught me a really valuable lesson that I didn't learn until later in life, or I guess I didn't recognize it. She was hosting her own show, number one microphone, telling people this is what we're going to do next. She is the bus driver. And then her show, they all had seniors. They left, moved on, and she was left by herself. And so she joined our show with me as the captain, me as the teammate, and more or less it was our show, but I was in charge. And she took on her role without ever making me feel, one, little, two, unimportant, three, like this wasn't still the show we were running. I think that's just a huge testament to her character. And I know you've worked with Eva Zamaris before.
Yes, I've worked with her. She was my competition, and then she came over to our station. She is so crazy talented. She just won an Emmy, so deserved. But yeah, she is, a natural leader, but also like goes with the flow and just like works with, whatever situation has been given to her on any given day.
And I can say she's a great co-host and not a bad beer pong player either. I can attest to that.
I've never played with her. Now I want to.
We got to make that happen. I mean, when we in college would do radio together and then we would drink together. That's college for you right there.
Exactly. I did my college TV station, so that's the vibe right there.
Oh, absolutely. You put on a great show for like 12 people and then you go drink with 12 people. There's more people at the party than we're listening, but that's okay, because I think that the best lesson I learned about college radio and college work, and for anybody listening who's thinking about getting into broadcasting, you should realize that there's always somebody watching. And you never know who that person could be.
I will say, though, there was always someone watching our college TV station because people would play a drinking game waiting for us to mess up.
Please, tell me more. Tell me everything about this, please.
People would come up to us like in the dining hall, like, "Oh wait, are you the anchor for STN, the TV station?" Like, "Oh my God, we were watching you when we were drinking the other night." And I'm like, "Oh no."
So was every stumble a sip, and if you mispronounce a word, like it's a shot or something like that?
I believe that's how they would do it. So I'm surprised that everyone survived, because as you know, in college, you're learning on the go.
Right. It's very much a reputation thing. You're figuring it out as you go. I mean, that reminds me of high school. Now, we wouldn't do a drinking game to it, but I was part of the fan section, because if you can't imagine, I was not tall or athletic in high school, as am I not tall or athletic now, enough to play basketball or football, but I was in charge of the fan section. And we would always take bets as to moments that the band and the team and things were going on, and they were always like the weirdest bets. Like, how many sips of the Gatorade bottle would the quarterback take in between, the first quarter and the second quarter, where it's a real quick change? And we would do an over-under. No wonder I ended up in Vegas. Or, with the baton twirlers or the tuba section or whatever, we would always make everything into a game. So the fact that they made your TV station into a game, hey, they're watching, right?
Hey, any press is good press, right?
Suzie Hunter doing a 30 ballpark tour. And what's the plan when you hit 30, Suzie? I know you're like, you've got your walk-in closet is the back of your car and your life is out of there. You're currently squatting in Denver with some friends, which is great and totally legal because it's with friends. When you first told me you were squatting, I thought, is this going to be like a Rent situation, like the Broadway musical? I was like,
no.
Well, I didn't hear that.
Squatters do have a remarkable amount of rights. I could stay in their apartment for way longer than they wanted me to with zero repercussion, but I'm not going to do that.
Good.
I've been in Denver, but I do need to mention that this road trip is also part of a big fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America. So as I'm visiting all 30 ballparks, I'm trying to raise $1,000 for every ballpark. The goal is $30K. We're getting there, but that's like also the big goal is, making sure I meet that fundraising goal.
That is so cool that there's a charity angle here. So the Boys and Girls Club, your 14 ballparks, if you don't mind me asking, what are we up to in raising money?
We are over 2,000,
Okay.
and I am waiting for that moment where maybe something of mine goes viral and I get a little more momentum on this fundraiser.
I love it. Listen, you got to start somewhere, Susie. If you said your goal was $100 a ballpark and you reached it, you wouldn't have reason to drive across the country. You would have reached it in about 10 minutes. So let's blow this up. Susie, how can people donate? How can people be a part of this? If it's just $1, I did something called the Venmo Challenge through my Venmo account and TikTok where people would donate money to me. I would turn that around and give it to a server in Las Vegas when our city was struggling massively, where our city runs on casino, runs on entertainment, and runs on service industry. And you'd be shocked. I actually ended up throughout 10 different donations. I raised over, oh gosh, over $12,000 just for people donating. For
I
people
love that. That's amazing. I need to get some Venmo in here.
Yeah, well, and so how can people donate who are watching or listening right now? What's the easiest way to get you the money for the Boys and Girls Club?
All right. I guess if you want to Venmo me, you can. I'm at the Suzie Hunter, obviously. But I also have a GoFundMe going, but you can find that at thesuziehunter.com/MLB-road-trip. But you can also find that link on my social media. That might be a little easier depending on what platform you're on. But I've got a link to the GoFundMe. And you can also follow along. I've been vlogging at these ballparks. I'll have a vlog with you where we're eating nachos at Blake Street Tavern in Denver, like the second best nachos in Denver. They're still amazing. But yeah, I've been documenting the whole thing. You can find that there too. But most importantly, that's where you'll find the GoFundMe.
That's what it's all about, is the Boys and Girls Club raising money with all 30 parks. You can follow her at the Suzie Hunter. Make sure to follow her if you have it within your means in this day and age to be able to donate. Please do, even $1. I mean, 1,000 people donate $1. There's $1,000 before you know it. And that was my attitude around the Venmo challenge, and I think we can make this happen. So, Suzie, I can't thank you enough for joining me. I could have you on for 4 hours if we wanted to go into the X's and O's of baseball and all things. And you just know, I mean, this is a compliment, not to myself, but to you. You just know a good person when you meet a good person, and I'm really glad that you and I were connected together because I really love your mission, your journey, and I'm rooting for you to get to that 30K.
Jeff, thank you so much. That was so nice of you. Thank you.
Well, you're the best. Suzie Hunter, everybody give her a follow. Thank you for taking some time for Do What You Love. And I will also, I'm sure by the time this episode comes out, our episode will be out too, so I'll link that in the show notes, in our description. Go check it out, and make sure if you have it within yourself to donate to the Boys and Girls Club. Let's make it happen. Suzie, thank you so much.
Jeff, thank you so much.